Hey YouTube viewers, my name is Jen Marie and welcome to my channel Crime Rewind. Today's case we will be talking about Danny Stowe, who was shot and killed at the Purple Onion on Stewart Avenue in East Point, Georgia. So we're going to go ahead and go on location there, and then I will see you back here. Bye. This is actually now named Metropolitan Avenue, and I'm not going to get any closer than this because I was already told when I asked that I wasn't allowed to film, and then I had to go through corporate. But when I went to go to the corporate website, it said that it was permanently closed. So I don't see a way to get around that, and I'm on public property, so I don't see any reason, as long as I don't have any people's faces in here, which I'm gonna try not to have. I don't think much has changed. The front, I think, is minus the awning, is still the way it was before, and outside of the front door is where Danny Stowe was shot and killed on the night of February 26th or 27th, reports vary. 1982, around midnight. It was a Friday night, so I think that was actually the 26th of February. So he was shot and killed right outside this front door of this club on Stewart Avenue, now Metropolitan. Welcome back, guys. We were just at the location of the Gold Rush Show Bar, which used to be the Purple Onion, and that is where Danny Stowe was shot and killed on February 26th or 27th, depending on which report you read, because it varies. So we're going to go over the history of the Purple Onion. It actually has a very checkered past, as most strip clubs do in Atlanta. Atlanta is very notorious for having a lot of clubs like that, but this particular club has had some very in the news, very scandalous things happen at this club since it's been in operation, which has been since the early 80s, I think. So the Purple Onion on Stewart Avenue, it is now Metropolitan Parkway, but the Purple Onion was on Stewart Avenue. It was owned by E.M. Galtney, and the Purple Onion was in business, I think, for about maybe 10 years. It closed down in the early 1990s. Then after that, it was shut down for not very long, I think, before it was bought and became the Gold Rush Show Bar. And that's when the street name turned to Metropolitan Parkway. And they did this because Stewart Avenue was so notorious for crime and for just a lot of bad things happening on Stewart Avenue. So the city thought that maybe changing the name of this street would enhance its reputation or make it better, but in my opinion, it hasn't. I mean, I wasn't here when it was Stewart Avenue, but as of right now, I live not very far from there, and it's still laden with crime. There's still a lot of shootings, killings, and things that go on over on Metropolitan Parkway. It's notorious for this. We used to work over off of Metropolitan as well, and it's not safe. Let's just put it that way. The most recent controversy that I could find anyways involved a federal judge and a stripper that worked at the Gold Rush, and this judge's name was Judge Jack Camp, and this happened in the 2010. So late 2010, Camp actually resigned his position as a federal judge before he pled guilty to drug charges. Now, the 67-year-old Camp, he was actually a Vietnam War veteran and had been appointed by President Ronald Reagan to his position as a federal court judge. And I think he kept that position for over 20 years, and he was actually in early retirement. I think he was still kept on to judge which cases he wanted to judge. So he was still being retained as a federal judge, but only worked occasionally. But he had a very good reputation, very well known around town. So he just had a stellar reputation, and from what I can tell, until this. So in his courtroom, Camp was known for handing out very stiff sentences, especially for drug offenses. He didn't want to hear any excuses. He didn't want to hear about extenuating circumstances involving your case. He didn't care about any of that. He didn't want to hear it. He pretty much gave the harshest punishment that was allowed by the law. So, which is interesting, actually, because karma. So earlier in the spring of 2010, Camp went to the Gold Rush show bar. He had received a lap dance from a stripper at the Gold Rush. The next day, he returned and paid for more than a lap dance. He actually paid for sex and also cocaine, which he did with this stripper. They did it together. Over the next few months, the dancer, who has been ID'd, eventually she was ID'd as, her name is Sherry Ann Ramos. Over the next few months, the judge and Sherry, Miss Ramos, frequently would meet, where Camp would pay her for sex and also give Ramos money in order for her to obtain drugs for them to do together. These drugs that they liked to do the most, I guess, were cocaine, marijuana, and he also liked roxicodone and oxycodone pills. So those were the drugs that they frequently got the most of. What Judge Camp didn't know was Sherry was actually an FBI informant, and she was working with the FBI in order to build a case against Judge Camp. So in October of 2010, Camp and Ramos had went to a Publix grocery store down here in Georgia. Went to a Publix parking lot to obtain drugs. The dealer that they were getting the drugs from was actually an undercover FBI agent. So Camp paid $160 to this dealer / undercover agent for some cocaine and also pills. And then he obtained the drugs. Then he drove to the Velvet Room nightclub in Atlanta. And in the parking lot, the FBI swarmed his car and arrested Camp. They recovered the drugs that he had just bought, and also 2 handguns laid on the passenger front seat of his car. So, when he was sentenced, he was eventually sentenced. I think he pled guilty. He pled guilty because he knew he was screwed. When he was sentenced, his sentence was unfair, obviously. He only received a 30-day prison term. 30 days, 400 hours community service, and 1 year probation. He only ended up serving 15 days. 15 days, okay? And then in court, his excuse was he blamed his bipolar disorder and a bicycle injury that he had sustained years earlier from when he had fallen off his bike. So I think that's pretty hilarious that he tried to bring that into it, seeing as how he was the harshest judge that there was on people who had drug offenses. But he only served 15 days, so, However, his retirement, I'm pretty sure, is gone. So, and his family name is tarnished and, whatnot, and not to mention the embarrassment that was created on the city, on Ronald Reagan, on just everybody that helped him in his quest to become judge, and as when he became judge. I mean, it's just a pretty big citywide embarrassment for everybody. That's not the only embarrassment that was associated with this club. So, in 1992, there was a ring of thieves and also corrupt police officers who committed a string of 18 burglaries of different stores and also nightclubs, and at least one murder that has been proven. The officers, James Batzel, Mark McKenna, and William Moclair, were all charged with the murder of Henry Jeffcoat. Henry Jeffcoat was the owner at the time of the Gold Rush Show Bar. Batzel and McKenna were officers in the Atlanta suburb of Riverdale. So they were officers with the Riverdale PD, which is a little south of Atlanta. So it's basically a suburb of Atlanta. And then Moclair was a deputy with the Fulton County Sheriff's Department. He also worked off hours at the Gold Rush as a security guard. So this is kind of an inside job, you see. They were all charged with shooting Jeffcoat to death at his home in Clayton County on February 10th in what appeared to be a botched robbery. And from what I could read, he was shot in his garage. And I think a robbery had been attempted on him before, because he was almost prepared. He was kind of prepared because he had a weapon with him. And he returned fire that I know of, because one of the officers got shot in the face, actually, in the cheek, I think. Fled from the scene. They both fled from the scene. And he was in the garage, and they shot him like 8 times or something like that in his garage before fleeing the scene. So he was somewhat prepared, poor guy, but he didn't get away. They got him. Shortly after, the arrest of 2 more Atlanta officers were made on charges of robbing a Home Depot in Fulton County of $30,000. The 2 officers, Brett Morrell and Eric Hagan, forced the store's manager to open the safe, where they then stole $30,000 from the safe. Morrell was actually in uniform and on duty at the time, I assume as a security guard at this Home Depot. So I don't know what they thought they were. I don't know how they thought they were going to get away with this, because they didn't kill the store manager, and he was in duty. He was in uniform and on duty at the time. So obviously he would have been able to be identified. So these guys weren't the brightest crayon in the box. Okay, so that's several scandals, I guess, that surrounded the Gold Rush. One owner was shot and killed. I know for a fact that there are several more involving just drugs and things like that with dancers that work there. And there's been questions of liquor licenses and just shady business practices. Like I said, when we were there at the Purple Onion, I was told, when I asked if I could film, I was told to get in contact with corporate, which the actual location of the corporate, after I looked it up, is permanently closed. It's no longer there. So I don't know exactly. I don't know who is in charge of the Gold Rush. I don't know. They seem to think that there's a corporate. From what I can find, there isn't. So to me, that's just shady business practices right there. I even looked up the tax records. They only go as far back as 2013. And it gives the owners of the Gold Rush as somebody in Vegas. So, it's kind of questionable, that right there. I could probably research forever on this subject and never quite come to a conclusion, either that or be in danger myself. So we don't want to do that. Just kidding. Not really. Okay, so on February 26th or 27th, like I said, there's varying reports. I couldn't find the actual police report. There isn't very much information on this case, period, online. Even there is a blog that is written by Danny's widow, and even in the blog, no offense, Luann, but even in the blog, there's some contradicting information with other reports. So I'm not sure which is correct, honestly. I think it was the 26th. So on February 26, 1982, around midnight, 28-year-old Danny Glenn Stowe was shot and killed outside the Purple Onion nightclub. He had been working the door that evening, that Friday, collecting cover charges because the regular doorman had called out sick, and Danny sometimes filled in as his extra, to make extra money. He sometimes filled in, so he had agreed to work. The club was a regular hangout spot anyways for Danny and his two brothers. They were usually there on the weekends playing pool. They like to play pool. There's pool tables inside. So because they were there anyway, usually he agreed to go ahead and work the door. And the night of that he got shot, his two brothers were there shooting pool. So they actually heard the shooting happen. The club was packed. From reports, the club was packed that night, and witnesses reported that there was a man, a customer, at the bar. He had started arguing with the bartender, apparently over the fact that he had been told he wasn't allowed to start a tab. That was against the club's policy. He wasn't allowed to get anything on credit. That was just the store policy. So because of this, the man got irate and he got angry when he was told this. He apparently pulled out wads of cash, was flashing it around to everybody, and he began to get aggressive. So that's when he was told that he would have to leave the club, and he was escorted to the front door, where the owner, I think, the owner was told Danny that not to let him back in. After exiting the club, this man walked a few feet. He turned back around, took a handgun out of his jacket, and fired only once, fired one time, striking Danny in the chest and killing him instantly. The shooter is described. Now, this is pretty consistent. Like I said, the club was packed, so there were a lot of people there that pretty much consistently gave the same description of this man. The shooter is described as a black male, around 6 feet 2 inches tall, and weighing approximately 170 pounds. He was wearing a beige derby hat, a 3/4 length brown leather jacket, and also wearing pointy-toed snakeskin boots or shoes. He also had on very distinctive, noticeable jewelry. He had on a 3-inch wide silver bracelet and also a full finger gold ring. I'm not sure how to describe that, but a full finger gold ring. Weird. Okay, there was an account by a dancer at the Purple Onion named Pebbles. That was her stage name, obviously. Pebbles said the suspect's name, that she knew him, that his name was Gator. And this is obviously this would be his street name. After this man shot Danny in the chest, he then apparently fled the scene on foot, jumping a fence. Witnesses said that he then returned not long after to the scene to retrieve his car from the parking lot. And this is the main thing about the witness description, is this car. People describe the car as being a Chevy Nova Super Sport in pristine condition. This car that particular car is thought to be a late 60s model with, it has a bright orange body and a black hardtop. Production years. Now, production years for the Chevy Nova Super Sport 350 Coupe are the production years from 1968 through 1974. Only a total of 5,571 Novas Super Sports were produced in 1968. Okay. Later that year, in the year 1982, and this is what police have, which isn't much, but this is what police have on this case. Later that year, 1982, police in Mobile, Alabama, arrested a man for a series of robberies, where a man had robbed, I think, personal victims, like robbed people in the street. Arrested a man for a series of robberies. A victim gave a description that sounded to police like the description of of Danny Stowe shooter in Atlanta. So apparently the Alabama PD, the mobile Alabama PD, called the APD about the possible connection, but there is absolutely no record anywhere of what became of that phone call. All paperwork apparently with this having to do with this case on the Alabama side was destroyed when Hurricane Katrina hit Alabama. The lead detective that had this case, the lead detective who had made the phone call to the Atlanta Police Department is deceased. His partner is also deceased. And when going through APD's records, the phone call was recorded, it was notated, but the reasons for that phone call or any outcome of what happened because of this phone call are not included. So there's no follow-up, there's nothing written in the APD records of what happened with this phone call, or just what if anything went forward or what happened. There's absolutely nothing in the records. And also to say, it just so happened that on the exact same day that Danny Stowe was killed, the APD had also arrested the murderer Wayne Williams arrested him for the Atlanta child murders. So they were pretty focused on Wayne Williams, and which is sad for the case of Danny Stowe, because they were so focused on Wayne Williams that not much attention, I don't think, was paid, obviously, to Danny Stowe, which is it's not just. So there were 2 pieces of evidence collected from Danny's murder. There was a drink glass, which the bartender at the Purple Onion had a presence of mind enough to take the glass that the shooter was drinking out of, and he actually put it under the bar after he had left. He put it under the bar and saved it and gave it to the police department. It was a drink glass with 3 partial fingerprints, and they also had the bullet that killed Danny Stowe, the one that was in his chest. And apparently, this evidence is no longer around. It was lost. It misplaced because no one can find it. There is no evidence. There is no more evidence. No one can find this drink glass. No one can find this bullet. No one knows where it is. The APD has nothing. Nothing. They made no excuses. They haven't even made a statement explaining the reasons why this evidence is no longer around. The APD says one of their excuses is they said they sent a latent print from this glass to the FBI to have it analyzed. The FBI says they sent the results back to the APD. Both the FBI and the APD have no records of any of this happening. So basically it's he said, she said. The APD is like, well, we sent it to the FBI. The FBI is like, well, we sent it back, and both sides are saying, we don't know what you're talking about. So, and of course there's no records of any of that. So if the FBI did identify a person from this print and sent it back to APD has no record of it. So that's great, APD. But there was in the APD records of this case, there is a name. There is a name notated about the man who apparently was arrested in Alabama for robberies. The name that has been given by the Mobile, Alabama PD as someone who they had thought was similar to the description of Danny Stowe's killer. His name is Harold J. Laster. His aliases, after much research on this man, and it's been very difficult to find anything on this guy. He's almost like a ghost. I mean, honestly, I don't know what happened to him, but his aliases, from what I could find, are Roland Laster and Roland Jester. His date of birth is September 23rd, 1949, and his address at the time was listed as being in Cleveland, Ohio. He was charged here in Georgia on June 21st of 81 in Spalding County, which is Griffin, Georgia, and that's south of Atlanta. He was charged with kidnapping and armed robbery. And then he also has a charge of escape on December 7th, 1981. So he escaped, which kind of fits the timeline. If he escaped from jail in December of 81, and then Danny Stowe was killed in February of 82. Not sure when. I could not find when he was apprehended. I couldn't find a date on that. I couldn't find any records. I mean, it was very difficult. There's nothing to be found. Absolutely nothing in Alabama. So I don't know what. Maybe they had him under a different alias, but I could find nothing involving a name of Harold J. Laster in Alabama. Okay, apparently he got the charges in Georgia. This is how he got these charges of kidnapping, armed robbery. In Griffin, Georgia, after the Big Star Grocery had closed for the night, the manager then went to his vehicle to leave. He was confronted by Laster and another man that was with him, who at gunpoint forced the manager to drive around the area for a while before they made him return to the grocery store. They entered the store and forced the manager to open the safe, where they then stole $5,000. They left in the store manager's vehicle, leaving the store manager behind. They didn't harm the store manager, but they did steal his vehicle, and they did kidnap him for a while. So that's where the kidnapping charge stems from. Now, the trial for him, for that, those charges, was held in June of 1984. And apparently it says that he was sent to the state prison at Reedsville, Georgia. Now, I can't, after looking in the Georgia prison system and the state prison at Reedsville, there's no record of a Harold J. Laster as a current inmate or as a parolee. There's nothing. So I don't know why there's no record of this man under that name. There's nothing. I can't find anything unless they've sealed the records, or unless I'm not even sure why there would be no record, or if he's not in the state prison system. But I'm pretty sure kidnapping is a federal charge. I couldn't find anything. So his appeal was denied in September of 1990. I couldn't find a release date. I couldn't find any records of him being incarcerated, period. So I don't know what's going on with that. His current address is thought to be still Griffin. Now, I don't know if that means he's still in jail there in Griffin. I mean, that doesn't make sense, because Griffin is nowhere near Reedsville, Georgia. It's nowhere near. So I'm not sure. I really did so much research on this until my eyes got crossed. So I just kind of gave up a little bit on trying to find something, because I would have had to pay money, which I did for what records I could get. I did pay a little bit of money, but I could have kept going probably and went broke trying to find some records on this man. So there is an interesting fact on the Chevy Nova Super Sport. In the year 1972, the production of the Nova model moved to the town of Norwood, Ohio, which I think is interesting, because it had his address listed as being in Cleveland, Ohio, and the production of the Nova moved to Norwood, Ohio, which is not far from Cleveland, Ohio, which I think is interesting. Now, people seem to be convinced that this was a Chevy Nova, but I do want to point this out, that they could have been mistaken. But it's very easy to get mistaken, because there are 3 other cars with the exact same X-body platform, meaning the exact same frame. Literally the same frame was used on several different cars. These cars were the Buick Apollo, the Pontiac Ventura, and the Oldsmobile Omega. I know for a fact that in the late 60s, GM did not manufacture Novas in the color that witnesses described as bright orange. GM did not have bright orange in its lineup of colors until much later. They did eventually include it, but that wasn't until much later. And they also didn't make Novas two-toned. So people seem to think that it might have been a custom job. basically. Or it could have been a different make or model of the car. That's totally possible. Okay, some info about Danny. Danny was born, and this is pretty interesting because we share the same birthday. Danny was born January 19th. That's also my birthday. 1954. He was married to, I couldn't find any information on his youth, so I don't have any information on that. But he was married to Lou Ann Carmichael. They had 2 sons, and they were pretty young when their dad died, I think 4 and 6. The son's name was Tommy and Danny Jr. Danny and Lou Ann, it was actually a very sweet love story. They had met as teenagers at a roller skating rink. They fell in love and were married in May of 1974. They had both just graduated from high school, so they were pretty in love, and it was very sweet how they met and fell in love, I think. He was a truck driver by trade, so he did that for his main income, and moonlighted at the Purple Onion as a doorman to make some extra money on the side. He lived in Forest Park, Georgia, and he is buried in Sherwood Cemetery in Jonesboro. Now, if anybody has information, if anybody knows anything about this Harold J. Laster, I'm not saying it is him. No one's saying it is him. I mean, some people are saying that it is him. But if anybody knows any information about this Harold J. Laster, can fill in some of the blanks that we have. If anybody knows anything about this Chevy Nova or an orange and black, pristine condition, late 60s, early 70s model Chevy. If anybody knows a street thug name that goes by Gator, he would be in, I want to say, his 60s or 70s now, this man, supposedly. I mean, we don't know. Pretty, old-ish. But if anybody knows anything about Gator, about this derby hat, about snakeskin pointed shoes, about anything that you know about this case, please call the GBI tip line at 1-800-597-8477. Or if you want to be anonymous, or if you would prefer not to call but do leave a tip online, you can go on, the website is gbi.georgia.gov. So if anybody, please, this case is so old, it's almost 40 years old. And Lou Ann, she's still here, she's still kicking. And the sons, Tommy and Danny Jr., they're still in the news because they want to know what happened to their dad. And there's no reason why this guy should not be caught. There's so many witnesses. I mean, for heaven's sake, no one wrote down the license plate of this car. I mean, he fled on foot over a fence and then came back to get his car, and nobody thought to write down this license plate of this car. So if anybody did that, please, enough time has passed. Any dancers from the Purple Onion that maybe knew this guy, now's the time, please, to call the GBI or tell somebody, the APD. I mean, they really dropped the ball, but it's obviously a different time now as it was back then. So, I mean, I know somebody out there has to know something. Somebody does. So all it takes is for that one person to know something and to call in with some information so we can get this solved. Because I know his family would absolutely love to finally have some closure on this case. And I think they deserve that. Also, the next case that I'm going to do is that of a woman named Faye. She actually vanished on November 9th of 1980. Then she was found in the trunk of her car on December 4th, 1980. So that will be my next case that I'm going to cover. And, I just wanted to thank everybody, the few people who have subscribed to my channel. I really appreciate it. Please spread the word and tell people about my channel so I can get more subscribers and more people watching this, and so we can get some of these cases solved, because that's really why I'm doing this. So please subscribe if you're new to my videos. Have patience with me. I'm trying to tone it down in the ums. So, this is Jen Marie, and thank you for watching my channel Crime Rewinds, and I'll catch you on the flip side.